This is Greg Canty here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. Ironically, the man who grew up living over a pub and hating every minute of it is the biggest owner of pubs as well as a microbrewery in Cork City. Benny McCabe loves pubs and pub life. He loves the atmosphere, the patrons, the special sense of community, the history of the buildings, and the unique role that they play in our lives. He talks about attention to detail, being a custodian of special places, the symphony of a great night in a pub, the effect of COVID on the industry, and the Miracle of Cork. Let's hear from Benny. Benny McCabe, a huge welcome to the Win Happy podcast.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Arthur Mains.
Thank you so much. One of my favourite pubs, by the way.
Thank you.
And I'm not just saying that. It's funny, actually. You're a man I know an awful lot about, and to be honest with you, I know absolutely nothing. And to the listener, maybe during the course of this hour or whatever, we can pull the curtains back on who this character is, if that's okay.
Sure.
Before we started talking, it was really, really interesting. It was one of your team came up with a cup of coffee for you, and you said something to her about the lights. What did you say to her?
Well, you've got, obviously, in this industry, you've got a lot of incoming staff who have to know the ropes, and it's every building has everything is nuanced, and generally it's getting dark now. What time? It's 4:30 or something, and you have to drive the lights down, not turn them up as it gets darker. It's just to create the warmth in it, Yeah. So I've been teaching this young crew how to fiddle with the lights, as I call it, and that young girl there, she has it nearly right, So it's just letting them know what they can and can't do,
So you've got a physical premises here.
Yep.
Obviously, you're selling beer and wine and food, but you're also selling an atmosphere and a feeling.
Yeah, I mean, what we sell, I suppose it's not what we sell. I suppose that's the transactional nature of it is the beer and the wine and thing. But I suppose we're trying to sell comfort. I mean, look, I'm sitting in front of you, and here we all are. I'm a publican, and how would I put it? I'm trying my best to surf the waves of uncertainty, if you like. So rather than being worried or stressed about it, you try and impart knowledge and try and make it as comfortable an experience for customer and staff alike, if you like. Do you know what I mean?
And honestly, how are you feeling? Because your back is to the window. I know we're looking onto Pembroke Street. We're in one of your many beautiful premises. There's a gorgeous atmosphere in here. You've got the lamps. We're surrounded by fantastic fittings. How do you feel? This is yours. This is what you created. How do you feel about it?
I have a very simple explanation. I'm merely a custodian.
Yeah.
Like old buildings, like old pubs, and sure, look, they were old. Greg, many years before I was even born. Do you know what I mean? They'll be there many years after I'm gone. So I guess it's a bit like farming the land, isn't it? You just try and pass it on to the next generation in as good a condition as you got it, if not better. Do you know, that kind of way. So that's our job.
And do you get a chance to take a breath and just soak it in a little bit, because you have created something that's very special, obviously not just here, throughout all of your pubs, your outlets?
Well, sometimes you tend to look around and go, God, you know what, I saved that place from ending up in a skip.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and do you know what, I didn't sell out to mass sports, or I didn't sell out to techno music, or I've kept this, and then it's most gratifying when a young person comes in, right? Or a person from out of town, right? And you'll get the, God, I was never in here before, And then they're here for the next 10 years, So it's about creating those spaces and maintaining the spaces that were, do you know what I mean? So like the Mutton Lane, it's probably there 250 years or more at this stage, So, it's rickety. It's, there's probably not even a foundation to the building, but it's there, and its walls tell a story,
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's just literally about just never change it, just keep it the way it is. I think every city has its go-to old-fashioned places, no matter where you are in the world. And I suppose for me, it's a privilege to, in a large way, accidentally manage to be that custodian, as I said. Do you know what I mean?
And in an effort to figure out how you think and how you approach some of these projects, would Arthur Mains be a good starting point? As if you were to talk about Benny McCabe and how you approach all of your pubs, would here be a good example of that?
No. Here was, we used a lot of experience in bringing this building back to life, but basically by not changing it too much. But I suppose I was born in a pub.
Which pub?
It's ironically, it was demolished to make way for the revenue commissioners.
After everything that you said.
Yeah, down in the Southgate Inn. It was an old Beamish house run by my mum and dad. And I hated the pub trade as a young fellow. All I ever wanted to do was be in the army. And
were you living overhead like the typical scenario?
Living overhead, you'd open your eyes in the morning and the smoke would have come up through the floorboards from the pub, and all of this kind of stuff, and
did you hate it?
Yeah, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And then when I was about 15 or 16, it came about through music. So we were into the punk era, and then we were into the Pogues, and we were into the Waterboys, and we were into all that. And all of a sudden, there was this fantastic punk fusion with Irish music and lyrically and the whole lot. And basically, they were drinking songs, and we were drinking. And then I went, well, hang on, and I do live in a pub. And actually, now that guy in the corner, that song now makes sense to me in the context of his lament or whatever he's missing in his life or whatever, and we had a funeral home next door when we moved to Cork Street in 1974. So it was constantly a progression of in and out.
When you say you moved there, was that the family?
The family moved there, from Sullivan's Quay, and we moved to the north side in 74. And so there was a unique situation where you had the funeral home, you had a point in time musically, okay, you had a point in time politically, whatever the whole lot, and all of a sudden I got turned onto it. Right. And basically by the time I was 16, 17, we were running clubs and gigs and bands and all the rest of it. And finally rented a place down on South Main Street when I was 19. And it was an early morning house. It used to be called Snotty Joe's. Yeah. And run by the legendary Paul Doyle before me. Yeah. And that was an education, and that was almost my graduation to university in pub culture, because that was early morning. That was dockers and nurses, and it was just an incredible eye-opener,
And I was working in the drinks trade at the time, because I've been with TC's, and then I went on to Guinness and kind of Heineken, whatever. And at that time, pubs were the thing to be in. Do you remember the Cheekers? Every day they were like, such a place sold for 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. It was a boom time for the trade, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Something very strange happened back then. Kind of, you had metropolitan Dublin, and you had Cork, Limerick and Galway, let's say maybe Waterford to an extent. And all of a sudden in the 70s, it went from being a vocation. So actually I met a fellow the other day from Sligo who was the undertaker, the shopkeeper and the publican all in the one, and it was only with relative prosperity in the 70s and 80s when fellas said, you know what, we can make a full-time living out of the bar trade. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But that was actually short-lived. That only went on for 20 years. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And then it got harder and harder because of over-regulation and insurance claims and Sky Sports, and I could go on, but you could make a living out of a small pub.
Yeah, the drink driving if you were
like in Cork when my parents started off. My dad used to be a milkman for CMP, and my mum stayed in the pub, and the pub was meant to pay for the school books and the shoes, literally. And my father would come along and he'd work 6 o'clock to closing, then get into his van and drive off down to West Cork with the ice cream and what have you. And that's what they did for years, So it was a secondary income outside of the major Dublin spots and some notable places in Cork City at the time, But it really wasn't a full-time thing. So then in the 70s and 80s, you had relative prosperity, a bit of inflation, and fellas, there was more disposable income. Do you know what I mean? And people decided they could make a full-time go of it, and you had this proliferation of fantastic lounge bars and places that music, they had carpet on the floor, And now they're all sadly gone as well, because it's after retreating somewhat. Now it's the nature of the business has changed.
But we kind of went to super pub quickly. Like in a Cork context, I remember Rosie's in Carrigaline.
Yep.
And people would go from the city to Rosie's because it was so cool.
Yep.
And the Derby Arms out in Ballincollig.
Correct. Yep.
When it opened, that big kind of renovation stage and everything.
Yeah. Do you remember the Angel Beer Hall in Douglas Street?
Yeah,
remember
exactly. These were Paddy the Farmers.
Yep.
And I think he was the first guy to have everything under the counter chilled.
Yep.
That was such a big deal at that time, revolutionary. And he was he was a Benny McCabe in his day. In my book, he was...
It was. Well, ironically, he bought the Chenet off my father in 1986. He did, yeah.
Yeah.
And then he went on to make his fortune, you know.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it was by chance my wife and I bought it back in 96. But that's a different story. But yeah, it's you know, back then the pub trade, we all wanted to be in America, didn't we? Like, it was all Budweiser, totally. And it was Levi's jeans, and it was all of this, and we had the pubs to go with it. Now it's getting to smaller premises and perhaps even more of them. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think the Oval Bar is your Levi jeans.
Yeah.
That's the thing you kind of relate to. So, and it's funny, I would have kind of swung back around to all of that, taking the habits of my son and everything else. When they become and start drinking, come on, Dad, we have to meet you for a pint in the Oval. You're like, okay, the Oval. Are you sure, Brendan?
Yeah.
And you go in there and wow. This is the coolest place ever. And again, for me, that's a little bit of Benny McCabe genius, which is the taking of a beautiful place and I don't know how you do it. The gorgeous tweaks.
No, there's no genius, because that pub was one of the first architect-designed pubs in the country, right? And I think it was a firm of architects in Edinburgh. And I think that the chap studied under Charles René Mackintosh, right? So you were talking serious flair in that, you know, built in 1918 for Beamish and Crawford. Mrs. Hart had it for many, many, many years, and she was a formidable woman, God be good to her. And then Dennis Murphy had it, so Dennis from the Shield Bryn above in McCurtain Street, and now of the Abbey Inn, and he had it. And so I suppose, you know, there was almost decent publicans had it all the time, so it wasn't messed around with.
Yeah.
It was left. It's a very pure looking pub. Do you know what I mean?
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Do you know, there's very few embellishments to it.
Yeah.
Do you know, as such, you know. So when you build it right the first time, you never really have to change it, do you? Do you know?
But at the same time, you seem to be able to spot these little places and turn them from old man pubs to very, very cool, trendy ones with just... it's probably a little bit of your tweaking with the lighting and a few little furnishings here and a bit of velvet curtains somewhere.
Or maybe I'm a bit of a hopeless romantic, do you know what I mean? And I also like to have a pint, you know, but I don't think there's anything into it. I suppose I have a folk memory or maybe a memory by osmosis almost of going to pubs on my father's day off. So he went to his publican buddies' pubs, and so I spent all my life in a pub. Like, and I suppose I do have... There are, I hate the word triggers, but design triggers, I call them. Jesus, I remember that table. Or I went through a whole Formica phase, you know, like, do you remember the Formica from the 60s? Do you know what I mean? Like, so I used to get tables remade with Formica and all the rest of it. So yeah, there's all that. I suppose maybe I had the folk memory of it, plus maybe a bit of romanticism, plus definitely we had exited our super pub time and it was time for something else.
Yeah.
Do you know that there's up to let me see now. If you and I went for a walk, I could point out 83 closed former public houses in the city centre alone since 1980.
And I'm guessing when you pass them, they bring a tear to your eye in some respects.
I was too young, you know.
Yeah,
there was a great pub around the corner here, which is now a coffee shop. And I can't remember the name, but there was two old ladies who used to run it, and it's opposite the Oliver Plunkett.
Yeah.
And I remember convincing all my guys that we were in our mid-20s, you got to go down to this place. This is unbelievable. There's two old ladies, blah, blah. It was a bit like Levis's in Ballyjob, only in the city, right? Yeah. And going down there, and next minute, pub closed, thank you for your custom. And it became a super pub. Shows me. And then subsequently, the super pub was no more, and it's now a Cafe Nero or something, do you know? So I guess, you know, it's sad to see him go, but it's great to be involved in preserving them.
And Benny, as we're having this conversation, and you know, at the beginning of it, we were chatting about music a little bit. And typically when there's a fine musician, if you kind of scratch beneath the surface a little bit, there was music in the family, or the father was something, or the mother was something, and it became second nature to them. Is the pub trade your music in a way? And if you spent all of those days, obviously you were surrounded by that atmosphere, the things that other people just can't spot and won't spot. It's nearly intuitive too.
Well, I don't know, maybe it's some sort of mental muscle memory, maybe, I guess, if that's how you know.
But you just seem to get it.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm obsessed by labels facing outwards, and this furniture has to be in a straight line. And for years, we used to go down to West Cork, and my friends would play a joke. You know, the way you'd walk into a pub and on a Thursday evening, there mightn't have been anyone in there since the Sunday evening before, you know, and there's nobody in there at all, but there's a smell of bacon and cabbage coming out the kitchen door, and there's a radio in the distance, and you have to kind of go, and eventually somebody comes in. But anyway, I'd go to the loo and I'd come back and the lads would pull out one of the chairs by just maybe 2 inches. And automatically, without even thinking, I'd come down along that and I'd my way back from the loo and I'd push it back in. Do you know what I mean? Or lampshades. I have a big thing about lampshades with the seam facing you. This kind of stuff. Maybe that's it. I'm not sure, you know.
Yeah, you just reminded me of a story. We were in Ballyheigue one day and like that on our week's holidays, and we wandered into some pub anyway, and there was only one old codger at the bar, no one behind the counter. And next man was very impressed because the old codger took out his mobile phone. Oh, this is at a time when, you know, everybody didn't have one. And the phone was ringing, but at the same time you could hear the phone ringing behind the bar. What he was basically doing was ringing the bar so that whoever was in the kitchen would come out and serve us, basically. So I thought that was that was a funny story. Did your mum and dad enjoy the trade, do you think? Would they have chosen a different career for themselves?
Well, my father enjoyed it immensely, God be good. But would they? I don't know. I've never asked them. You know, I've never asked them. Would I have chosen a different path? There's easier ways to make a living.
I'd say a million easier ways.
But in terms of job satisfaction and the stories and the people you meet, you know, it's just unbelievable. You know, like, you know, every day is a new day.
Would you talk to me about your different premises, your children, and what they all mean to you and the character of them?
God, I don't know. You know, a public house is exactly that. It's a compendium of those who've gone before and those who are there presently, and aspiration who'll be there in the future. Do you know what I mean? So you take the Sinead now, which is my favourite of them all, up in Cork Street. Like that's just.
Do they always get jealous? Do they?
Oh, they do. Yeah. They don't like that. You know, there's only one love. You know, but its roots go deep. You see, because it's like a country person's pub in the city, and. You know, it was traditionally where farmers would come in or whatever. In fact, the whole area, if you go back before Cork Street, it was known as Madden's Field. And it's got a very unusual shape to it. In actual fact, it was where they drove cattle. So on the Leitrim Street side, it's wide and it's narrow by the lights by Patrick's Hill. And, I did some research. The downstairs, the basement was a wheelwrights. The first floor, the pub itself was a pub. And upstairs was a saddle makers, right? It was all these kind of industries going up, you know. So, do you know what? We've people that are going there for generation upon generation upon generation. Do you know, we're only there since the 70s. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? There's people who've been there way longer than us. Do you know?
Yeah, you're the blow ones.
Yeah, we're the blow ones. Like there's a colleague of mine I work with, Chris. Like his dad drank there in the 60s and 70s. You know, everybody has a story. You know, but it's a place where. How would I put it? It's different to most pubs in Cork. It's in the north side, but yet it's a countryside pub, but yet it's a kind of a touristy place as well.
Did you change it?
Did I change it? I did. I took up the carpet. You know,
that was appropriate.
yeah, I took up the carpet, but we're doing a job now across in the pavilion, and we're putting the carpet back into it. You know, so everything has its time as well.
Yeah.
You know,
tell me about the pavilion.
Brilliant. I don't know, just a kind of as luck would have it. There was a changing of the guard, and we were offered an opportunity to step into the guy's shoes, you see. And you know, again, it's an old story. You couldn't invent the pavilion. It's got beautiful old ceilings.
Not a chance on this earth. It's totally unique.
So all we're doing is working with a bunch of guys who can restore the plaster work and all that, and bring it back to the way it was. We're kind of very excited about that. You know, so it's an honour, like, you know.
Yeah, in a way, you're kind of. You're a guardian for some of these things, aren't you? In a funny sort of way. Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, you know, nobody will remember me, but they'll remember the pubs, you see, and that's the thing. Like, just like if I asked you, well, who owned the Mutton Lane in the 70s? Well, there was a family called the Rings, actually, a famous Cork family pubs, but your average customer wouldn't know that, you know. They don't have to know it, you know. It's the pub is beyond. It's a bit like traditional musicians, right? Yeah. And the tourists often say up in the Sinead, well, why do you face a circle away from us? You know, so well, to face out is ego, and that's to look for attention, and that's to look for the round of applause, whereas the music is everything, and that's why it's a circle. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's ancient stuff, like, you know, and I like that, you know. Some people say it's archaic, but I love pub etiquette, pub manners. Do you know what I mean? Which is lost on a lot of people these days, you know. But it's kind of the world of excuse me, you know, after you, sir, or you giving your seat up to an elderly person or all of that, like that should be automatic. It shouldn't be prompted from you,
Of course it should. You okay there?
But, so it is, it's an interesting trade. It's one, I have to say, do you know what? COVID, right? And I mean this, right? COVID will be seen as the resurrection of the public house. Because for years, the public house was it was under attack, right? By, how would I put it now? Like a lot of journalists would share their life experiences, right? Especially in the established print media. And a lot of it involved addiction, and it involved basically people, trying to better themselves and dig their way out of whatever problems they had, right? And I suppose alcohol and heavy alcohol consumption was always a crutch for deeper problems, And unfortunately, the narrative kind of changed, in my belief. Now, this is my opinion. And it changed, and whereby it almost led kind of an anti-pub narrative, in the media. They didn't mean to do that, but it was a kind of a case of, well, I'm reformed and this is how I'm living my life. And all of a sudden, it was seen to be bad to be seen outside a pub with a pint in your hand, or whatever. It might be a Tuesday afternoon, as I said to you there earlier on, and you've just worked 70 hours. Do you know what I mean? You've had an amazing time surfing.
And this is your Saturday night, isn't it?
This is Tuesday afternoon is my Saturday night, and I've got some car in an SUV stuck in traffic in Cork Street going, oh my God, there's a man with a pint. Do you know what I mean? But she'll go home then and have 3 bottles of cheap Chardonnay.
Yeah.
So we have to divorce the alcohol addiction side of it from the public house side of it, and everything that the public house means to people, right?
So the pub broke that cycle in a funny way, you think?
COVID did because we, like the neo-Puritans, if you like, had their day. Through the prism of certain elements of the print media, how they viewed it, and the pub was bad, and the pub was this, but guess what? There was a clear cut, how would I say, view was formed that in actual fact, for people's mental health, they needed the institution of the public house. They didn't need 5 bottles of below cost wine on a Saturday night and a curry. They needed 2 pints on the Tuesday afternoon and a chat. I'll give you an interesting one. I had 2 customers with missed cancer diagnoses, cotton time, thank God. I had one friend of mine had an amputation, right? But in every case, if they had come into the pubs, the person behind the counter knew them so well, right? They'd say, Johnny, you need to get to a doctor, or I think you don't look well, right? But they were stuck at home, right? A lot of them are single men and women, right? Increasingly single women as well, right? They're at home. They have no connection to anything, right? And it's a tenuous thread, right? That ties your mental health to, and I feel that it was the pub, and I think that people have finally got that, Greg. Do you know what I mean? That the pub isn't some sort of menace to society.
Yeah, of course it's not. It's at the heart of the community.
It's the heart of the community. I mean, we divided Cork up into quadrants, and we used to go out and visit during the lockdown our elderly customers, and it was just heartwarming. Like
Did you really?
Yeah, they were part of our day out. So I'd get a couple of cans of beer and I'd stand outside their door and I'd pass in a couple of cans and we'd just stand there in the freezing cold. This was great crack.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I mean, it was as much for us as well as it was for them, and it's that sense of community, right? And I think we were losing it. I genuinely do think we're losing it, but I think that the net effect of COVID will be an explosion in all things good to do with the institution of the public house. My mother is still with us, thank God. And I said, ma'am, I remember you talking about the polio outbreak in the 40s. That was actually particular to Cork. And she's
we have the assembly room, or not the assembly rooms in the Turkish bats, didn't we? Inside in Jacobs, and they were used. Those bats were used for polio patients, believe it or not.
Well, but I remember saying to her, well, what was it like being a teenager in the 1940s? Like, how did that work? Like, and she said, oh, sure, look, we didn't go to town for a year. And we weren't allowed to go to dances. And what happened after that? Sure, we know what happened after that. It was the show band era.
Yeah.
Do you know
Explosion.
what I mean? Maybe your super pub is coming back. I don't know. But what I do know is we crave community and we crave communal activities. Yeah. And I feel that the clear tragedy that COVID is to those who are mourning and all the rest of it, in the future, I think we've arrested the decline of the public house.
You mentioned that addiction part, and I had no intention of going there on this conversation at all. It hadn't even occurred to me. But did you feel a sense of responsibility in the different pubs to some of the patrons from time to time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. As far as I'm concerned, they're in your care.
Yeah. Would you have seen some of them, getting into trouble and taking responsibility around it? Would that have been part and parcel of?
Well, there's multiple layers of that, right? There's the Greg, if you don't give me the keys to your car, I'm going to give you a box.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sure that's happened more than.
I think you should really go home to your wife.
Yeah.
Or I don't think you should be talking to that girl, or and so on and so forth. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of it's almost it's like keeping the peace. Like, we are the confessor and chiefs behind the counter.
Yeah.
Right. So we know all. Right. Yeah. And it's confidentiality.
Yeah.
Right. It's support, and it's knowing when to be appropriate and when not to be, and when to make interventions and when not to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you know, maybe you want to call some guy's brother and say, listen, I don't like the way he's been drinking there the last couple of days. There's something up with him.
So
right?
At one level, it's tweaking the light downstairs and making sure it's at exactly the right level at the right time of the day. And at another level, it's making sure that the person you've employed to stand behind that counter is the conductor of the orchestra in a funny way.
Yeah, it's funny you use the word conductor, because I often use the word symphony, right? Because when it's right, Greg, my God, you're standing behind the bar, and the whole room is actually, I'm not a hippie, right?
Yeah.
But it's vibing on the one frequency.
Yeah.
It's the same. Everybody's on the same bus.
Yeah.
And then, have you ever been in a pub and one person walks in the door and the entire temperature goes down by 3 degrees?
Yeah.
Those people exist as well. They suck the energy, right? And it's about dealing with the energy suckers and getting rid of them as well.
Yeah.
Like, now, by the way, I don't get it perfect all the time. Do you know what I mean? I get it perfect a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Do you know, but not all the time. So yeah, that's and do you know what? Another thing about COVID as well and pubs is that the younger crews that are coming through working in the pubs. So here's an interesting one. Couldn't get a teenager to work for 20 years, right? Now all of a sudden I've loads of them, right?
What's happened?
So what's happened is very simple. They missed the PUP thing because they were 16 and 17, right? They've grown up through COVID. And I've asked all my guys, I said, ask them one question. Why? Just tell me why a teenager is now coming to work. And there's a universal answer. Do you know what it is? It's my mum and dad are having difficulty paying the rent, right? So if I want my runners and my phone, right, I got to go to work. So now it's back to when I was a young fella and you were a young fella, where you could do what you want, but we're not paying for it, right?
That was a fairly simple equation.
So you went out, you hustled, you worked, you got every gig you had, and you made your pocket money, and off you went with the lads, right? So I have huge hope, and that's why I'm investing in, how would I put this now? The tricks of the trade, if you like, teaching them about the lighting and the bits and pieces, because I see them, I see their work, right? They're coming from a different place from the everybody gets a medal generation. Do you know what I mean? Who didn't want to work, and we've all spoiled our kids to a degree, like. Do you know what I mean? But
they're products of us, and we're products of our parents.
Well,
so
well, we are. I mean, we're products of the 1950s and fear of poverty, and your grandmother eat the grizzly bit, eat the fat, or you get a box. You see? But we are, but it's now come full circle. Here we are today. The pubs. As I said, surfing the waves of uncertainty is the only way I can describe my life for the last 18 months. But at the same time, we have a situation where they've now decided to close the late bars, close the clubs and all the rest of it. Right now, we're not closing to protect the health service. We're closing as a direct result of austerity, right? And the whole lot. But those kids are coming to work in the pubs as a direct result of austerity as well. And there's something beautiful for the future in the fact that those kids are now getting up off their backsides and coming to work. I find it nothing short of phenomenal, because I was beginning to become that middle-aged guy who thought that the younger generation were a bit feckless, but in actual fact we're skipping into another one now, and they're very impressive.
And maybe it's a simple case of the circumstances needed to be provided to them for that character to flourish.
Correct.
In the same way that was second nature to us.
Yeah.
Tell me about brewing.
Brewing? Sure. Look, I was something I always wanted to do. I was fascinated by process, and my grandfather used to be the creamery manager out in Crossbarry all his life, And I used to love that whole just bringing a product from the farm gate to the table, So I could never understand why a publican didn't have a cooperative piece of his own brewery. Okay. You've got a situation where you cut off your right hand to get 2 All-Ireland tickets with Guinness. Yeah. Or some fellas are into the Grand Prix, or other fellas are into the rugby, and it's like, but why aren't you investing in yourself? And why don't you own your own brewery? So I remember pitching to the vintners in Cork and a few more probably 12 years ago, if everybody gives 25 grand each, we'll build a brewery and you have an unlimited supply of beer for the rest of your life, attractive credit terms, a bit of a better margin, not huge, but a bit of a better margin. And you have something that you can call your own rather than paying out every week and every week, Sure, I was laughed out the gate, really, by most of them, so I did it myself. Yeah. And I was very lucky.
Benny McCabe, man. But
you know what? No, there's no big ideas. This is.
I can imagine what they were saying in that room.
Oh yeah, I don't know, but look at. There was a building down on Cormarket Street and it was shuttered because of the Celtic Tiger had crashed. And it's now 2012 and I'd be down in the Bodega kind of saying, Jesus, I wonder what's behind that gate, And the problem with brewing is you need height for tanks. You need serious height, and you need a truck delivery thing. But you also need it to be in the city centre because, we should bring manufacturing of all types back into the city centre. Not just brewing, but everything from candle making to woodworking. That's another story. But I think we will see that happen again. I think hyper-local is the word. And so I asked the security guy, can you let me in there? And kind of, it was almost like, I don't know, the Sistine Chapel. I couldn't believe it. So,
well, I was chatting to some sisters today as in nuns. And they spoke about the calling. I think, did that calling happen with you that day?
No, I'll tell you. Did you? Everybody has a part in their life, Greg, where they've decided that actual fact everything feels right.
Yeah.
Okay. And whether it be the woman that you marry, but you also have a professional or a vocational one, right? And I remember I was up in the Chenet. I'd say I wasn't even 30. I'd say, and I'd mopped the floor. And I put on a bit of Tom Waits, right?
Yeah.
And I was down and I had a pint by myself.
I was listening to him last night.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah. You see, I by the way, you should always try and design a pub. You say if Tom Waits was an Irishman, what would it look like? And that was the design brief for the Crane Lane below, right?
That's a good brand brief to a marketing person. Now, I like.
That was that one, right?
That's your kind of your persona when we talk about that stuff. Just think of an album.
But I sat down to myself and I said, "Geez, that was a great night. There was all sorts of crack in the bar. Very funny things happened." It was just one of those nights where I could tell a half dozen stories, but I don't think I know you that well on this podcast. It was a magical night, right? In terms of crack, right? And I went, okay, I can do this. I going back to the symphony, I conducted it in such a way that everybody went out the door happy.
Yeah.
Right? Happy, right? And I said to myself, right, I think I'll be all I can be in this business. And I'll go ahead and I'll open more. It's probably a mistake. I probably should have stopped at a couple, but I just got the bug then of taking these places and trying to keep them. Trying to keep that vibe,
And does that feed you in a funny way? Like, do you need that newness? Do you need those new opportunities to feed your interest in what you're doing?
I did actually until about 3 or 4 years ago. It was actually a drug, I suppose. If you kept going, Greg, you'd get yourself in trouble because you'd eventually get to one more deal that was good for you. Right. So, and at that point, you neglect everything that's behind you.
All of a sudden, the good guys are paying for the bad guy. Just to support
this kind of thing, right? Yeah. And like you take the biggest publican in the country, say Louis Fitzgerald, right? Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why he only owns X amount of pubs. Do you see? So what we're doing now is like, I mean, you can look out here. We're repainting buildings and we're re-roofing. We are now going to go backwards, and we're going to go backwards in search of excellence in terms of bringing what is you can't put. How would I put it? A management structure or even a marketing structure out of MBA central casting and put it on a public house, because a public house is a combination of the people that use it, right? Okay, it's not actually the management. So it's the street controls the pub to a degree, right? Okay, if you know what I mean. So you can't replicate that. Okay, Wetherspoons can replicate it because that's price based. Do you know what I mean? We're a different model, right? And we're not publicans anymore. We're business people then at that stage. Do you know what I mean? So then the vocation goes out the window and the bean counters come in. And to be honest with you, that's where, so the fun was beginning to go out of it for me. So we've about 4 projects left that are pre-COVID that were in the pipeline in the city centre. We're going to bring them to fruition and that's it. And in the meantime, we're progressing backwards to enhance and preserve what we have. And that goes down to passing on the vibe, let's say, to those younger kids that are coming in, right? Because they are the future. Like I'm 50 now, and the days of doing 60, 70 hours a week and all the rest of it, I'll probably get another 10 years out of it. I love it, but you can't be frontline, So it's probably even time now to just make sure it's the ethos gets passed on.
Yeah.
Do you know?
With so many outlets, there's obviously a big management scenario going on, and that kind of HR thing and having good people. Is that something that came easy to you?
No, I'm very lucky in a way that everybody's been with me for such a long time. And funny enough, like most of the managers are women, and some of them have gone away and had their families and come back even to work, you know, because, you know, I just think it works better that way. So for some reason, I think female management in a public house can even say that, but it works better.
Wow.
You know? Yeah. And also we have a very kind of...
Why do you think?
I don't know. I think it's because, again, why do people come to a house, you know, like that? They come to be minded. And I think the women express that better. Plus you have kind of the fear of your mother as well in a certain residual way as well. I think it works. Do you know what I mean?
That's really interesting.
You know, plus we don't have a management structure that would be classic for the reasons I just mentioned.
Yeah, of course.
You could look upon us as being dysfunctional, or you could look at the figures. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, because it's very easy to get caught up in your corporate and, you know, caught up in this and that and the other and the whole lot, and you forget why you're here. Do you know what I mean? You know, like you learn more from standing behind that counter tonight than you will be being in an office. So we don't have an office as such. Do you know what I mean? You know, we outsource all the vital functions, you know, the bookkeeping and the HR to some very, very good people. And that allows me to, like, I've been in 4 or 5 pubs today, you know, already. And, you know, I'm better off sitting down talking to you as a customer. Greg, how's your mum? Did you get that job? It's like being a TD, actually, you know, at times, you know, can I help you with that reference? And so on and so forth. And that's the value. And then that feeds back into what we are and what we do. Do you know what I mean? Anyone can sell drink. That's not what we do, like. There's a bit more to it.
When you say anyone can sell drink, going back to the day when you were in the pub, food wasn't really a thing.
No.
But now it's a bit of a character in a lot of your outlets, isn't it?
Only about half of them, yeah.
And you have another new place on Oliver Punk Street, don't you?
Yeah, well, well, we'll see. No, that's subject to planning now at the minute.
Oh,
okay, hopefully we'll get news before Christmas.
Yeah.
And there'll be no food in that pub.
Yeah, okay. So
No.
is food... Does that sit well with your...
No, I hate it. I hate it. But I just on that, I see a reaction against the all singing, all dancing. We can serve you lasagna at lunchtime and play your match and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You know, I think you're going to see people going back to their corners. Restaurants will be restaurants. The so-called wet pub. Horrible description. But a pub without food, i.e. a proper pub, right? Okay, as opposed to a bar, right? That'll re-emerge as part of this COVID thing. So the next 2 jobs we're doing, there's no food. Yeah. Do you know?
And like that now, my favourite local, it won't be a place where they're serving food next to you. That's not what I think that customer wants anymore. The mistakes along the way, the ones you kind of, oh my God, wish I never did that. And you probably learn from every single one of them.
I made every mistake in the book known to man, right? And I'll continue to make mistakes till the day I die. Yeah. I won't lie to you. I mean, I did it all. I didn't pay the VAT. I was in trouble with the revenue. Do you know what I mean? I was over trading. I was, you name it. I did, but I had the benefit of doing it when I was 19 or 20. And then I spent all my 20s paying off my debts, which meant that I didn't get to participate in the irrational exuberance of the Celtic Tiger and all the rest of it. And, you know, they say we all partied. We didn't. I certainly didn't. I wasn't allowed. I didn't have the credit rating, you know. So I think it's my mistakes early on in life saved me from making bigger mistakes later, you know. And again, from working behind the bar, it's an observational process. I mean, the famous thing about Joe Kennedy and the shoeshine boy giving him tips and shares. Well, there's a guy who's coming to me in Cork Street and he never had a job in his life, but he had 3 apartments in Bulgaria. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So the writing was on the wall, like, do you know what I mean? So yeah, you name it, I've made those mistakes.
And that big crash, 2009, 2010, did that turn you upside down?
No, I never overextended myself. I was never in NAMA, or I never did anything. There was no property. There was no mad stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
I stuck to what I knew.
Yeah.
Right, because I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I mean, I'm not going to come in front of you and say I'm a property developer or I'm a racehorse owner or whatever. Do you know what I mean? You know, stick to what you know and you'll be able to sleep at night and do it to the best of your ability.
So the property dimension was never part of your game?
No.
Let the gross margin and the net profit pay for the mortgage, and at the end then you own something and that's cool. That's not your driver.
No, it's not. I never got involved in any of that stuff because of the mistakes I made in the past.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I don't run around seeking alpha, as they say, and there's too much money in the world, Greg. Like, it's chasing assets, it's driving up, it's mad. Somebody's going to get burnt, like inflation will come, you name it, it'll happen. And it's not a COVID-related, we're stuck in the ports product inflation. It's real inflation. I mean, it's the pensions Ponzi scheme, for example, all of that, like that's all yet to come. But I mean, you can see it coming a mile off. So I'd rather just stick to what I'm doing,
Was there a temptation to do outside of Cork? Now, there was one or two Dublin
I'll tell you,
dances, wasn't there?
Yeah, and I would still hope, for all I've just said, to get to break into Dublin. But Dublin minds its own corners very well. It's very hard to break into Dublin. Mind you, all the Dublin guys are from Tipperary or Limerick or something like that originally,
exactly.
Or Cavan or Galway, But Dublin's a different market. I'd rather stick to what I know. That I can create more value by being around for my own customers than.
Yeah. And do you need to be around that? You probably do you? To be able to pop the head in the door, and that conversation you had with the lady who came up with the coffee, that's in Dublin. You've no idea that the light is too bright.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's a level of OCD or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but seriously, it's those little tweaks that has the atmosphere. I'm sure you've had that conversation as well. You go into a place and you kind of know, well, this isn't being run by the owner. You just know it.
Yeah. It is. There's a particular place I go to, and the managers are off every Sunday. It's just the lampshade is tilted that way from the night before, or there's a. Well, look, it happens to all of us, But no, as I said, there's easier ways of making a living, but this isn't really about that. It's more the vocational side of it.
And that character that's at the centre of everything that you do, which is our dear friend Cork City.
Yeah.
Do you love her?
I fell out of love with her, and I'm mad about her again. And again, funny enough, Greg, that's COVID. You see, COVID gave us time off that we never had in our lives, right? Because we weren't on the front line. All the foreign kids that come to work, whether it be up in Apple or Foxborough or whatever, they love it. They absolutely adore Cork City, and I could never get it because for us it was the land of up the bare stairs, and do you know what I mean? And those kind of short stories. It was of misery and emigration and Fallon.
The place we were getting away from.
There you go, right? And all of a sudden I'm walking down these streets and I'm walking along the riverways and I'm kind of going, oh my God, I had time to savour my own city. And, I always said from a business perspective, the conditions existed for being one of the best small cities. But now I know it because I've walked it and I've seen it. Do you know what I mean? So I would have if Charles Darwin was around now today and he was commenting on the social aspects of COVID, right, it would be quite clear to him that Cork City will thrive, but Dublin will find it more difficult because it's a bigger animal and the conditions have changed, do you know what I mean? And the conditions are ripe for progress here in Cork City. Do you know? Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah,
do you know?
And we do work in both places. And something I always said to people about Cork, it's got a lot of the great things about a city and not too many of the bad things.
Yep.
We did work, I'm not sure if you were aware of that a number of years back about the Cork brand. It was more from a business point of view and students and investing and all that kind of thing. It was really interesting. So the starting point we had as part of our research, it was really, really scientific. What do you love about Cork? We were asking that question of, obviously, the locals, people from different parts of the country who had decided to, make home here. But a lot of those people you're talking about, the Spanish girl who came here for 6 weeks, who's working in O'Connell's coffee shop.
Yeah.
She's still here 12 months later.
Yeah.
They love the place.
Yeah, her son is now called O'Sheen 4. Going to the local Wales Cup. Yeah.
And you do end up looking at our city through a different lens. And I suppose, in a way, I heard so many positive things. You kind of walk down the streets with your chest out a little bit. It's a place to be proud of. But there's loads of opportunity. And if you could change anything about it, if you had the keys to the city and if you had access to some of the levers that could improve it, is there anything you'd be saying, yeah, there's a few things I'd definitely be doing?
Well, I came from a background where I was always, when I was a bit younger, I'd always be finding fault and arguing with certain departments of Cork City Council. But you have to hand it to them now, Greg. I call it, this is genuine now, the Miracle of Cork. We're looking out here, we're painting this building and doing it up now because they're about to pedestrianise it, right? We have to spruce it up because now we're responsible back to our city to make sure that our buildings are looking good to match the good endeavours of others, right? We have a situation where Cornmarket Street and Princes Street and Beasley Street now and Pembroke Street, Caroline Street. So all of a sudden, we now have this glorious outdoor culture. Now, if you went looking for that 10 years ago, you'd be laughed at, because Cork had that certain to we were all about business, but we're not about leisure, and kind of hospitality was seen in a kind of a different light. Do you know what I mean? You had the South Mall here was 7th richest business street in Europe by turnover up to the Second World War.
Wow.
Can you imagine that level of money, right?
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. So we had a hangover from our colonial past, where it was a bit stiff upper lip and it was a bit starched collar, etc. And I think we've all loosened out over COVID, but to use the resources we had by pedestrianising the streets. By the way, I was completely anti-pedestrianisation, right? I don't mind saying it publicly on your podcast. I had no problem saying it. I'm completely converted. I mean, what this has done for the city, and it's just bringing in tourism, and it's now busy every night of the week.
Yeah. It's just nicer.
It's just nicer. So there's the change in attitude emanating from Cork City Hall is nothing short of extraordinary, in terms of then the ability for us all to present a united front and to be able to, as you said, the levers to get the funding for all of these things. It's nothing short of miraculous.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be half as confident if it wasn't from that. This is the first time I can recall in this city that we have civil service, business people, and let's say the customers all marching to the same tune. Never seen that before.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Yeah, it's happening now.
Yeah.
It's happening right now. And when you say about your chest out proud, listen, we have the same problems as every other big city. We have a problem with the drug dealing, we have a problem with this, that, the other, That'll come in time too. We do need more policemen. We do need all of that, Maybe we need to be less lenient with a lot of the offences, etc. But other than that, the transformation has been miraculous.
Yeah, it's funny. We used to do an awful lot of work in Killarney in particular, and there was always this rising tide mentality there. And you go to other locations and you just don't see it. And let's get them here and we'll argue about it when they come.
I know, yeah, exactly.
We'll fight amongst ourselves and we'll be competitive and everything. That huge mentality, and you have to work together.
You do. Now, the one thing, if I could change one thing, right, to answer your question, if I said to you that you could solve the current homeless crisis nationally within the bounds of Cork city centre alone, you'd probably laugh at me. But the idea that 3/4 of the shops in this flat of the city are empty because we can't comply with the fire regulations. Okay? And upstairs here, you could fit 2 families. Okay? All our little pubs are vacant upstairs. You can fit families up there. You could make, without much investment. But unfortunately, they don't have the second exit. And then you go to Paris and you do an Airbnb because you're going to a rugby match or something, right? And fellas in my build have to go sideways up those steps, right? And then you're saying, well, where is the exit anyway? Yeah. Because we're conditioned to look for exits. And that's great. I get it. But I think you'll see a time shortly where, we'll all get together again. And what tech solutions are there to allow us to live over the shops again without the exits that we can never get, right?
Yeah.
And so what form does that make? Is it an app? Is it some sort of virtual reality map of a house with heat sensors? So when the guys from the fire brigade come, they know where, they don't have to kick down the door. They know where the heat is coming from. Stuff like that, right? All of that is vital for Cork City Centre. And I believe there's a tech solution to a fire compliance problem. And I reckon at that point, Cork becomes golden. Do you know?
And maybe you should, at times where it's appropriate, shuffle the deck on the rules and regulations and the priorities. So maybe if you shuffle the deck just a little bit different, you can solve problems and not prioritize some things as much as anything. Yeah. Of course, we're not saying that everyone be in danger with a fire or anything like that.
But look, we were all children of the Stardust disaster, right? And it's literally seared into our memories. And it's an awful thing. But now you have to say to yourself, okay, well, the winter hasn't hit here yet. But look, it's mild outside. We're all going around. We're not wearing any coats. So we're going to have to pay for this January, February. How many people are going to die on the streets due to have fallen through the cracks, so to speak, when they could be? So, they could be living over the shop someplace, right? So do we weigh this up? What's the best option? What are the odds of a fire over these places rather than a guy dying on the street?
Yeah,
Do you know, it's valid. You know, and we're right to ask that question.
And there's a lot of property dereliction as well.
Yep.
And then there's another opportunity, which is bringing up a lot of these properties and make Cork one of those friendly places where young people can come to and actually get a place to rent.
Well,
or get a place to buy, and now you've got another layer of vibrancy. And
well, I mean, here we are, and quite rightly so at the time. But without foresight, I suppose we banned the bedsit. Yeah, I mean, the bedsit was great. We all lived in one where you could make your dinner, watch TV, and probably shave without getting out of your bed. You know, I mean, they were desperate, but I think they were still better than these student accommodations that we're building at the moment. Yeah. Right. No disrespect to the people who are, and that solves the problem as well for us, because I live in Magazine Road. And there's huge development going on up there. I mean, and when those student flats are ready, well, then those houses revert back to families or working people. So it's a win-win in one sense. But why not the bedsit again? You know, why not? Do you know what I mean? As you say, I mean, if we can have incubator businesses and, you know, pods for small businesses starting out and workspaces, but why can't we bring back the bedsit? Do you know?
Yeah, and I can pull a door behind me, and that's my home.
And that's your home.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
You're on the Win Happy podcast. What's happiness to you?
Happiness? Oh God, just peace. Peace and peace.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, happiness is doing an honest day's work. Okay. Do you know what I mean? And making other people happy and trying your best.
An analogy I give everyone when I talk about winning happy is that you might love playing football, but without goalposts, it becomes a little bit pointless. And there's huge satisfaction to sticking the ball into the top corner and that moment of pure joy and fist pumping. What are your fist pumping moments? And when you think to the future a little bit, what are the kind of the win moments for yourself?
I don't know. I haven't figured that one out. To be honest with you, my happiness is from a whole series of daily small victories.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's from making you happy as a customer. When I go home tonight, will I get a half an hour run out the straight road? You know, yeah. I hate the idea of it, but I'll do it. That's a small win. You know, has a guy started a job like this painting? So this is the first coat of paint this building has gotten 100 years, I reckon.
Yeah, so that's a win, isn't it?
That's a win, right? Damn it, they didn't shut us all down today in our entirety. That's a win. Do you know what I mean? Because if, you know, it's a win because it means that my elderly customers have someplace to go to. That's a win. It's a win for them as well, right? It's a multifaceted, you know, it's a multi-dimensional win, right? So you know, where will I go? Happiness, the PAV there now, for example, right? I'm working with a local artist, Anthony Ruby, and just signing off on a design with him. Do you know what I mean? That's happiness because I know that it'll be my grandchildren and your grandchildren, Greg and Gresham, will benefit visually from that piece of artwork. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's a win.
My dad, God rest him, took me to see James Bond there when I was a little small fella.
I know. It's funny. The last movie I saw there was with my two brothers, Back to the Future, and it's kind of funny. We're sitting here now talking about it.
Michael J. Exactly.
Yeah. Nearly 40 years later, like, you know. I suppose COVID is the central theme at the moment, and it's helping everybody, I suppose, take stock of their lives and their business and the whole lot. And to be honest with you, there can, despite the heartbreak, right? My own father died 2 years ago, now next week, and we're all still grieving, you know. So I empathise with everybody who's fallen afoul of COVID. Do you know what I mean?
But was that a COVID situation?
I have my suspicions. I reckon just on that point, COVID was here in September. It wasn't a thing that just arrived in the new year, you know. It was definitely here in 2019. But notwithstanding that, nothing but good can flow from this, because I think it's highlighted what really goes on in our health service and how those frontline people are treated. Do you know what I mean? You know, and it's something that cannot be ignored. And like, we're not closing down now this time for the benefit of the health service. We're closing down because of austerity. Yeah. And because of like, if I said to you, Greg, build an extension to your house tomorrow, right? And by the way, here's all the money in the world to do it.
Yeah.
You still wouldn't do it any faster. Because you can't, right?
This is true.
It's time for an honest conversation. We can't fix this problem this year, next year, the year after, but we need to start now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think, I've no political party, but I think there's a general awakening in this country.
We'd like to have a good party.
Yeah. Well, do you know what?
2022 maybe.
There comes a time where all things change. Like, you know, I'm exploring a radical centralism myself at the moment. I'm having great crack with it, you know, as a concept. But No, it's. I think there's an awakening. I think only good things will come from it through the heartache, right? And it's very real. And everybody is worried. I mean, members of my staff now, being made homeless, because of, rent, they can't afford the rents, but there's good will come eventually from it. It's no comfort to us now. But I always tend to see, you talk about the goalposts, I see them, we might get halfway there before we fall down with exhaustion, but we're going forward. Do you know what I mean? And that's the only way we can go. Yeah.
I have one last question for you, and it's a biggie.
Go on.
What was your best day?
Oh, my best day. I'd say, well, apart from the birth of my children, I suppose. Do you know what? I could give you several best days.
Go for it.
6th of June, 1988, Ray Houghton. That was definitely one of the best days. Do you know what I mean? On a flippant level, God, I don't know. That's a good question. I'd have to go with my kids. Because it was the best day, but it was also, could have been the worst day too, because God, it's real now, you have responsibility.
Well, they're stressful days, in my opinion. Of course, they're wonderful, but you're like, whoa. They're anxiety days, aren't they, until it happens pure.
Well, what if you decided that every day would be your best day?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
that's a good approach.
It is. I mean, you have to, like, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? It could be, Jesus, the chips and curry were lovely, or, God, that was a great pint, or, wasn't that fantastic now today? Or, down to Garrettstown for a stroll. Do you know what I mean? Like,
just perfect.
Every day, I reckon, and again, because again, COVID is the central thing. Like, I reckon that every day is your best day now.
So I'm going to stick with one more question, even though I break the rules. I told you it was the last one.
Go on.
Middle of the week, a sneaky pint. Where are we going?
Or we're going up to Chennai and Corporate Street.
Fair.
Yeah. We're sitting in the back,
And who will we meet there?
We'll meet all kinds of people. Well, it depends. People, different types of people come in by different doors. So, for example, the back door to Chennai, it's mostly left-handed people go in there because they view the pub to their right. It's a thing. And then the right-handed people go through the front door because they view the bar counter on the left. It's a thing I have. So I'm left-handed myself, so I had to kind of rewire my brain. Years ago, I was a very clumsy child that was knocking over old ladies on Patrick Street with their shopping and getting a clip around the ear from my mother for doing so. And I learnt through kind of NLP,
Someone said to me, God, for the life of me, I'm thinking, I was telling someone today, I was really looking forward to meeting you. And they were saying, here's the thing about the position of his bars. Yeah, they're either on the left or straight in front of you. They'll never be on the right. Yep. If it's on the right, he'll change it. Is that the case?
That's correct, yeah. That's 100%. I had to rewire my brain to, like, even today. Okay, did you ever go down Patrick Street and you go one way and the person opposite you goes the other way, right? Are you left-handed or right-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Okay, so the other person is probably left-handed because you're walking the same direction, right? And there's this kind of a flurry of, sorry, excuse me, sorry, and then you kind of laugh and go past each other. One of you is left-handed. See, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Right?
Even worse, there was a lad that I used to work in the accountancy office with just around the corner many moons ago, and just say 1983, 84, we're heading off on a job together. He used to do the accounts for Cork office supplies. So if you come to Cork Market Street. So you'd leave South Mall to Cork Market Street. We used to have a fight about the route. And you're like, for God's sake, this is just so stupid. So you're probably right.
No, it's true. Just, right-handed people look to the left. It's crucial from the design of your logo to your office to everything. It's how the 90% look at it,
Wow.
And it's a thing I learned by accident, and I had it confirmed to me later on then by process. And it works. Like,
it's the little details.
It's little details. It's like you can orientate your bar to fit 300 more people in. Yeah. But in actual fact, we're probably busy for a year because in actual fact, psychologically, the person gets confused. Did you ever walk into a pub and kind of almost get a fright? Because you walk in and all there is a wall, and then kind of you hear from behind you, sorry. Excuse me, are you all right there? And you're thrown then.
Do you
know what I mean? That's what happens, So it's about flow.
Okay. Benny McCabe, thank you so much for coming on the Win Happy podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure.
And, I'm looking forward to having that pint with you. Good man yourself.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.